Hey, okay, well, along these lines, so one of the things that you have been saying for weeks now is college football changes on a weekly basis, and so expecting things to continue like they have is very, very silly, right? And I think UCLA is a great representation of what we're seeing right now. They have suddenly won 3 games in a row. They beat Iowa at home last night, and in theory, they could be playing for a bowl berth in the next couple of weeks. So I was trying to figure out, okay, has this ever happened around here where the season feels completely lost and then they're able to turn it around and I want to describe this as getting to true bowl eligibility. So I'm not thinking of the second or the first Mike Riley year, rather, because they went to a bowl, but they were 5-7. That was because of grades, right? Yeah. But do you remember the vibes? And what I basically was trying to do was figure out what were the vibes like when they had a similar record and then somehow pulled out from under it. Do you remember the vibes?
First of all,
do you remember the vibes going into the Kansas State game in 2005 in Bill Callahan's second year? That team was 5-4.
Wait, is that the Harrison Beck game?
That was the Harrison Beck game. Nebraska had lost, so they started 4-0. They had the brutal loss to Texas Tech, 34-31.
Oh, God.
They went on the road. They beat Baylor by 9, and then here's what happened after that. They went to Missouri. They lost by 17. They came back home and played Oklahoma. Yeah. That was the throat/slash game. They lost by 7.
Oh, my gosh.
And then, Jack, they went on the road at Kansas and lost 40-15. The first time that Kansas had beaten Nebraska since the 60s. And so I went to the Kansas State game the next week, and the vibes going into the stadium that day were not great. People were not in a good mood. Year 2 of Callahan. I think hot seat stuff was very much a conversation. And then here's what happened. They won that game by 2. They got a field goal late. They went and beat Colorado by 27 points.
Yes, that is the game. That's the game right there. The Corey Ross game.
And then they beat Michigan in the bowl game. And so it's like, if for those who are saying, Jack, you're an idiot, stop thinking that they can turn it around because there's no way it will happen. That year, it came out of truly nowhere, absolute nowhere, and it was like, what the hell is this?
That Colorado game that is the last game, Josh, I am sure of it. That is the last game where I went in absolutely shocked and bamboozled by how good Nebraska performed in a game.
They were massive. They were like 17-point underdogs, and they won by 27.
Just killed them. Just absolutely killed them, and Colorado was missing field goals that they were making. They had, what's his name, who kicked for the Packers then? And
yes, they did. Mason Crosby.
He was never missing anything, and he missed, I think, 2 field goals in that game.
The students got kicked out.
Nate Swift was unstoppable. Nate Swift looked like
Ross had an early touchdown.
Corey Ross threw a touchdown, I think, which he brags about to me still.
Nice.
Josh, that's a great find. You're right. Yeah, the problem is that's once in 20 years that it's happened, and so people are going to say, "Yeah, that's your example. You found one in 20 years."
I tried.
And I appreciate it. I appreciate it to a lesser degree. They didn't, going in and beating Iowa under Mickey Joseph is a smaller version of that. I would say too.
Yeah.
Where I tried to say,
but it didn't mean anything, as we've discussed many times. The next day they hired Matt Rule,
it didn't mean anything, but it was still an example of things can change. That sometimes things completely change. But I will listen to the argument that while that may happen in college football, it somehow does not happen to Nebraska over 4 coaches in 2 decades.
Yeah, it's been 19. It's been 19
you're right.
years.
You're right about that. It's another one of the mathematically unbelievable single-digit games, having the last drive, right? Stuck on 5 wins, all of these things. They're all, the law of averages is freaking gotta kick in at some point. You're switching people. You're switching coaches. It's not the same coaches. It's not the same players. All it is the same fans suffering is the only similarity that runs through all of these. So I will hear that argument. You're right. It didn't happen last year. It didn't ever happen last year when things went to crap. People said to me they could lose 4 in a row, and I probably made fun of them then. They ended up being right. So I don't blame people for thinking that this year, but I will say there's just a chance, because the norm in college football is teams don't stay in the same place for a long time. You and I could go back and forth with examples of that this year like crazy. Colorado. Do you remember when people were shaming Nebraska fans before the game started for storming the field against Colorado because they wouldn't be a good win.
And now it's easily the best win
now,
that they will have all year, no matter what happens in the final 3 games.
Those same people who were shaming are probably like, boy, Nebraska should look at some of the stuff Deion do. You jerk. You freaking jerk. I don't know if that person exists, but if they do, they suck.